Hi Year 6, it's Mrs. Ullah here. So it's Monday the 1st of March and our learning objective today is to write effective sentences for our balanced arguments. And here's our success criteria. So these are the things that we're going to focus on putting in our writing today. So by the end of the lesson you should be able to use time adverbials and powerful adjectives, use a colon to introduce a list, and use a contrasting conjunction when using a subordinating clause. So we will be having a look at that. So these symbols here, the first one is a symbol that we will be using when thinking about adverbials. So if we look at the clock, that's sort of telling us when. The arrow might be telling us where, and the little arrow is telling us how. So imagine like when we move quickly. The second symbol, that is all to do with our punctuation. So if you see that, we're talking about punctuation. And the third yellow symbol is when we are talking about our sentence structure. So you'll recognise these symbols from last week when we were thinking about the shape of our writing. So remember, we were going to use a question for our heading, and then we would move on to our introduction. So those are the two things that we're going to be focusing on today. I would like you to click on the BBC link below, and I'd just like you to watch the certain parts that I have highlighted here. You can watch it all if you wish, however it is about 15 minutes long. So I would just like you to watch from the start up until 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Then you can skip it to where it gets to 12 minutes and just watch 12 minutes to 13 minutes. And then again you can skip it to 15 minutes and watch it to the end. If you would like to watch it all, that is absolutely fine. So when completing our sentence stacking lessons, these are the ones that we're going to be highly modelling for you. So we're going to be thinking about chunk 1, and our initiate stage is where we build up our bank of ideas. So remember, the first thing we're focusing on is our time adverbials and powerful adjectives. So what time adverbials can you think of that would suit this piece of writing? So just jot down any ideas that you can think of and then move to the next slide. So here are some ideas that I came up with for my time adverbials. So we might be able to use something like over the last few years, in recent times, since 1997, since the birth of the iPad. All these things tell us when, and that's what our time adverbials are. So if you haven't got those ones, maybe add those to your list. The second thing we're thinking about in chunk 1 is our powerful adjectives. So I want you to have a think about what powerful adjectives could we use to describe the intensity of the debate around screen time. So here, what I want you to think back to when we were watching debates, when we were learning about democracy. And remember how those debates, especially in the Houses of Parliament, used to get very heated. So think about that. I've just said they can get very heated. So that describes the intensity of the debate. What other words could you think of to describe the debate? So you now should have a list of adjectives that you've come up with to describe the intensity of the debate around screen time. In the previous slide I said we could use the word heated. We could always maybe use the word furious, raging, passionate. Those are words that we could use to describe this debate. So now we've built up our bank of ideas in our initiate stage, we now move on to our modelling stage, and this is where I will be modelling my sentences to you. So remember, we had to come up with a question which would be our heading. So mine is going to be, is screen use making children lazy? Remember, I then am focusing on time adverbials and powerful adjectives in this sentence. So my sentence starts, and this is my introduction, remember. In recent years, there has been ferocious debate surrounding children's ever-increasing screen time and the impact on their well-being. So, I've ticked off there time adverbials. I've used in recent years, and remember to use your comma after it. I've then used the word ferocious, which is a powerful adjective to describe that debate. So I've hit both of those things which were in my success criteria in the first point. I've also included my heading and my introduction. Move on to the next slide so that we can have a look at how you're going to do this. So we've had our initiate stage where we built up our ideas. I have then modelled to you how to write this section. Now you are going to enable, and you are going to write your own sentence using time adverbials and powerful adjectives. So the first thing you need to do is write your heading. The second thing you need to do is write the first sentence of your introduction. It must open with a time adverbial. Use the ones from the initiate stage that you listed. It must then include a powerful emotive adjective. So in that second stage of initiate, you came up with some powerful adjectives and I gave you some examples. So use one of those in that first sentence. So we're now moving on to the second chunk of our writing, and we're going to go through the 3 stages again: initiate, model, enable. And this will help you to produce a brilliant piece of work. So in this second chunk, we're going to use a colon to introduce a list. So I want you to have a think about, what other words could we use for when people get fired up in a debate? So I want you to just list some different things which we could use. So here are some ideas that I've come up with. You could add these to yours, but you might have some others. So I've said if somebody's getting fired up within this debate, you know, when we were talking about in the last slide that it was getting heated, I might say that there's a spark. You know, imagine that fire, there's a spark. It ignites, it triggers, stimulate, stir up, arouse and kindle. So if you don't have those words, maybe add those to your list. So we're now moving on to our second stage, which is modelling chunk 2. So remember, we're going to use a colon to introduce a list. My sentence starts, it has sparked passionate viewpoints and opposing opinions from all sections of the community, including, colon, doctors, head teachers, parents and children themselves. So from that initiate stage, I said that I wanted a word to describe how the debate gets fired up. So I've said it has sparked passionate viewpoints. People have different views and they feel very strongly about them. I've then said that people have different opinions, and I've said who those people are. So we've got our doctor, which is part of our community, our head teacher, which is our senior view, and our parents and children, which are our pupils. Okay, so move on to the next stage and we'll think about how you're going to enable your own writing. So we're now going to enable chunk 2 using a colon to introduce a list. So when you write your sentence this time, remember it must follow on from the last sentence that you've written, but I want you to use a powerful verb, one of those that we listed in the initiate stage, and I want you to use a colon to introduce your list of people with the different opinions. So we're now moving on to chunk 3. Just a point to note, please make sure that you are writing each sentence after each slide. Don't wait until the end to do this piece of writing, because these slides will really help you to make sure that your work is really detailed and including everything that you need. So we're moving on to chunk 3, and remember the symbol represents our sentence structure. So we're thinking about using a contrasting conjunction. Okay, so have a look at this sentence. It is important that both sides of the argument are heard. Write a subordinate clause that could go at the start of this sentence using a contrasting conjunction. Remember, contrasting means that they're opposite sides. You could start with although, even though, or despite, because those are all contrasting conjunctions. They give different sides of the argument. So here are some examples that I've done for you. So I've started the first one with although. Although this issue is riddled in controversy, it is important that both sides of the argument are heard. So the blue part is the part that I gave you in the last slide, so keep that the same. The red part is my subordinating clause using my contrasting conjunction of although. Let's look at my next one. So my contrasting conjunction this time is even though. Even though a consensus of opinion is unlikely, it is important that both sides of the argument are heard. So that's telling me that we don't think we'll come to one idea and we'll agree, but it is important that both sides are heard. And then my third one, using despite as my contrasting conjunction, despite the growing calls for restrictions on screen use, it is important that both sides of the argument are heard. So there I'm saying that we are wanting to put restrictions on it, but we still want to hear what both sides of these opinions are. So the second part of our initiate stage is what synonyms could we use for the word important? Jot them down for me, please. And here are some examples that I've come up with that you could add to your list if you don't have them. So I've got crucial, vital, imperative, paramount, essential, and pivotal. So we now come on to the second stage of our chunk 3, which is me modelling to you. So, although riddled in controversy, it is important that both sides of the argument are heard. Okay, so that's my sentence. I've got my contrasting conjunction and I've got my word important in there. So this is the final sentence that you're going to write, chunk 3 and the enabling stage. So you need to write your own sentence, first using a contrasting conjunction to start your subordinate clause, and make sure you have that comma in there, please. And then you need to use a synonym for important. Once you've done that, you should have a heading and you should have 3 sentences. Go back through the slides and check that from each enabling stage, so chunk 1 enable, chunk 2 and chunk 3, you have done everything in the list that we have asked, please. Once you've done that, if you upload your your heading and your upload your heading and your 3 sentences, and then we will mark them for you. I'll speak to you tomorrow, Year 6. Bye!